was atrocious. Hi, welcome. Happy spooky. Yeah, it's technically almost over because it's almost Halloween, but it wasn't long enough for me, so I'm going to continue thriving in my spooky season. So anyway, today, as you can tell, I'm going to be talking about Hubie Halloween, which just came out a couple weeks ago. I hate to be this person because I love Adam Sandler. I know that like he's hit or miss with a bunch of people, but I disagree. I had such low expectations for this movie. I'm going to come right out and admit it. And so, you know what? I actually even just decided to do this because I was like, I just want to hang out, pop some corn, and watch like a fun movie, whether or not it turns out to be good. So that's what I did. But actually, it like really surpassed my expectations, which my expectations coming into it were about 0. So it couldn't have done any worse, but it genuinely is so funny that I just feel like anything that he comes out with, people are automatically yes or no, like 100% on either side. So like people who don't love him aren't going to watch it, but it's genuinely so funny that you'll enjoy it regardless of how you feel. So to start it off, it is rated PG-13, and IMDb says, despite his devotion to his hometown of Salem and its Halloween celebration, Hubie Dubois is a figure of mockery for kids and adults alike. But this year, something is going bump in the night, and it's up to Hubie to save Halloween. First of all, why is his name Hubie Dubois? I understand it's a comedy, but can you even try to be a little less obvious? So yeah, I mean, going into it, just assumed Adam Sandler plays this ridiculous character, and that's just all it is. But there's actually a lot of intrigue, which is one of my favorite elements of a movie. And it's also not as obvious as I at least thought the first time. So when it opens, first of all, I don't know if it's like editing or like the what the fuck would it be? Videography? I don't know. The like graphics and shit that they use is very appealing to my eyes. I thought it was nicely made. So in the very beginning, it takes us to a mental hospital, and our dear friend Ben Stiller reprises his role as the psycho nurse and bursts into this room like being sassy towards whatever inmate is supposed to be there. Well, it's a psych ward, so it's not an inmate, but like a resident. And he's like trying to be funny, which doesn't work in that situation. But as he's trying to like torture this guy, no one's responding. So he pulls the blanket back, and underneath the blanket is a body shape crafted out of Jello squares and hot dogs, which is so random. But if you think about it, in a psych ward, like what, I don't know, I'm basing all of my intel of psych wards off of movies, so I feel like Jello is pretty much all I ever see people eating. Whatever, that's so unimportant. So somebody escaped from the psych ward, and the window of the bedroom is just open. And the way that they're talking about this guy who ran away, his name's Richard, they act like he's like a serial murderer, like basically freaking Michael Myers. And his door is just wide ass open with the wind blowing to and fro. And like, how is anybody surprised that he was able to figure this out? He's obviously not stupid if he like committed all whatever heinous crimes he did before this. Ooh, that should be a movie too. Anyway, so that happens, and then we're just taken away from it, and we see Hubie, our guy, is riding down the street on his little bicycle with his pumpkin helmet and his go-to freaking Swiss Army thermos. Yes, a thermos. He carries a soup thermos that can do everything. Just a couple right off the bat. It is a bullhorn. It does hold soup, which is pretty useful. So I won't knock that skill set right there. It is a blender bottle. It has a grappling hook. It has an umbrella. So you get what I'm saying. So he's got his handy dandy thermos strapped on tight, and he's riding down the street, and it actually is like really sad. I'm not gonna lie. I feel so bad for him when you watch this. It's so upsetting because everybody is so mean to him, like so mean. So as he's riding down the road, people are just throwing shit at him, figuratively and literally, because at first they just like start throwing eggs because, you know, mischief night and such. But then the freaking O'Doyle clan, which I love because in Adam Sandler movies they always have like the bad guys named O'Doyle, which really isn't that important, but I appreciated that touch. Anyway, the freaking O'Doyle cult is riding around town right behind him wearing their scream masks, or maybe that's at the end. They wear scream masks all the time though, so it's not like that crazy to assume they're wearing them here too. They take literal bags of dog shit, light them on fire, and are throwing them at him like a freaking bomb. And they have a lot of bags of dog shit, which is never addressed. So we'll move on. So they like quickly pan over some of like the important characters. Julie Bowen is there. She plays Violet Valentine, who ends up being Hubie's love interest. It's so absurd, but we're just not going to go there at this point. Hubie works at the deli. Everybody's super mean to him there too. Ray Liotta is there as like one of the antagonists throughout the whole thing. And what's this other kid's name? It's sometimes shocking at the level of celebrity that he gets in every single one of his movies. But I mean, you shouldn't be shocked. I shouldn't be shocked. I'm not gonna pronounce this right. I'm so sorry. Karan Brar. I'm so sorry. His name in the movie is Mike, so he also works at this deli, and he's also a freaking shit eater. And so he and Mr. Landolfa, who's Ray Liotta, like team up against him. They call him names. Hubie is scared of everything, which is quite shocking for his affinity towards Halloween. He is scared of everything. So they're mean to him. O'Doyle's there buying all his eggs and toilet paper to ruin the town. And when Hubie's like, hey, maybe don't ruin the town, he's like, fuck you, guy. So things just aren't going that great on All Hallows Eve this year. And then we see Kevin James, who plays a real life cop instead of a mall cop this time. And he looks insane. He looks like a G.I. Joe action figure that was like a collab with Teen Wolf. And he's just in his cop car doing pretty much nothing. And when he finds out that this guy Richard has escaped the mental hospital, so everything does come full circle. And what's his name in this? Steve is the cop. Kevin James. Steve finds out about this, and he's like very perturbed at the reappearance of Richard, but nobody explains why. But apparently we don't like him, so he's like super upset that Richard is not in his hospital bed anymore. And then Hubie comes up trying to be a good freaking citizen and is like, hey, just so you know, this dumbass kid O'Doyle is buying all of the mischief items out of our store, and maybe just like keep an eye out for mischief because it's Halloween and kids create mischief, especially kids who suck like O'Doyle. But like Cop Steve just does not give a fuck. He does not care. Hubie is a huge like annoyance in his life. He's a freaking thorn in his shoe. and is just so inconvenienced at Hubie trying to be a good person. And then this is when he gets pelted with dog shit. So then, after they throw bags of hot flaming dog shit at him, he falls off his bike, which nobody cares to see if he's okay, except this guy played by Steve Buscemi, Walter Lambert, he says his name is. And he's like, oh, hey, I'm Walter, and I live right next door to you. And I bought this house, even though it looks like a ghost house. And if you hear any ruckus at night, just actually don't come over and don't inspect. It'd be really bad if you came over during my ruckus. And he was like, whatever, dude. I have literal pee-stained sheets hanging up in my front yard. I have bigger things to worry about. So Walter is suspect from the beginning. And this part is even so much sadder. So Hubie goes home and his mom's there and she loves him so much, and every single person in this town hates him with everything inside of themselves. They try to physically maim him every single day, and his mom is there baking cookies, and it's like, hey, you want to ice some cookies with me? And he's like, oh, only if I get to it's so innocent. But also at the same time, mom and her friend went to the thrift store and bought all these 50-cent t-shirts that have super vulgar phrases upon them that are seen throughout the entire movie. And that in and of itself is a reason to watch this, because they are fantastic. They are A+. Any person would be lucky to pay more than 50 cents to own one of these t-shirts. And then so while they're frosting the cookies that she bakes, she also kind of gives him this little life lesson. Hey, you have to stop putting up with all this bully stuff because everybody sucks and you don't deserve it. And he's like, oh, mom, stop, whatever. So, okay, there's genuinely so much that happens in this movie. There are a lot of different character plot lines to follow. So I am going to do my best to not make it worse, but I'm kind of the worst. So I don't make any promises. I can't. So Hubie's upstairs reminiscing over high school and his love for Julie Bowen, and we find out that she was actually with Cop Steve, and it didn't work out. They're divorced now, but that's a thing. And so I guess maybe it's going to be another reason that Steve ends up hating Hubie, because Julie is not even shy about her feelings. She could not be more obvious if she wanted to. If she just decided hey, you know what, I'm going to be super bold and just pronounce my love for Hubie, she already has. But he's so naive, he doesn't get it. And we see that there's this farmer couple who hate each other so much. And their pig named Peanut is deceased. Unfortunately, little Peanut is no longer with us, and he was about 4 years old. So things are already starting to go a little haywire in town. So Steve is there investigating, oh, who could have harmed your pig? And the couple is too preoccupied with fighting each other that the wife does not even care about Peanut whatsoever. But now Cop Steve just has it set in his mind that it's Richard. Everything that happens for the rest of the night, he thinks it's Richard's fault. But we technically don't even have evidence that he's here yet, because the hospital isn't in Salem. That's just where he's from. So they were really only calling Steve to be oh, heads up, he's gone. If he wants to come home, he might. But then we did also see that he is there, and they pan up his, or maybe down, they pan over his body in a direction, and he has his hospital bracelet on. And I will say that they got one over on me, because he has this signature blonde bob of a David Spade. So I was like, oh my god, David Spade, one of their best friends. But it's not. We'll see. And he is just walking around town pissing. He is just pissing all over the damn place. And it's just, he's got a lot in there, but that's his deal right now, is he's just pissing all over town. So then we're at this witch museum, because it's Salem, so you got to talk about witches. And Hubie's there because he decides to be try to be nice. Obviously nobody's interested in that because they hate him, but he printed up all these cute little Halloween word searches and tries to give it to this dumb pilgrim lady who looks like a walking ghost and goes, oh hey, like I know that there's a line outside and I printed up these word searches so like the kids can have fun. And she's like, oh my god, that's so cool of you, and then legitimately tosses them in the trash. Bitch, he's trying to help you with your job. Could you be nicer? But then Julie's right there, the love of his life, and it's very upsetting because she wants everybody to be nice to him, but nobody is. And she mentions, okay, I miss this part. She has custody of 3 children right now, a boy and 2 girls. I know for a fact the daughters are foster kids. I thought originally that the son was her real kid from her marriage, but I don't know that for a fact. So I think they're like all foster kids. So I'm just going to say that they're all foster kids, and you can come at me if you want to. So she's chaperoning for the one daughter, and fun fact, both of her daughters are played by Adam Sandler's real life daughters. You're welcome. And his wife is also, I mean, she's in pretty much every one of his movies, but his wife is also in this movie as well. She's the reporter. So he says hi to her one kid, and everybody's super mean to him still. Shocker. And Julie's being quite obvious with her romantic advances. And then so he brings up Walter, his new neighbor, and how suspicious he's acting. And she's like, oh, that's interesting, because in the cemetery next to one of her grandparents or ancestors up there, there's a Walter Lambert on the tombstone, but there's something fishy about his tombstone. So he was like, oh, that's interesting, tell me all about it. She's like, you'll figure it out. Bitch, what? When I go to a cemetery looking for my own family members, I'm lost. How do you find that shit? She's just like, oh, you left to your own devices, guy, have fun. But with his handy dandy thermos, Hubie can do anything. So he goes to the cemetery, and there's a funeral happening in the plot directly next to Walter, which is poor planning. But the priest is played by the guy who I only know him from, he was on a freaking superhero TV show, and I don't remember what it was called, but he played like the TV show version of Mr. Incredible. His name's Michael Chiklis, which just makes me think of Chiclets, like the little gums. What was he in? No Ordinary Family, that's what it was. He played the dad in No Ordinary Family, and they were like a family of superheroes, and he was basically Mr. Incredible in that. So he's the priest, and the like priest assistant is stupid kid Mike, who works at the deli, and he's the worst. And the one of the family people is Ray Liotta, who's also the worst, and Hubie's like just trying to do his detective work. So he whips a little garden shovel out of his thermos and is trying to do his work without disturbing the funeral, because he's super considerate of other people. Except as he's flopping up dirt, it's going all over this new plot during the freaking ceremony. Anyway, basically, after his deducing, he finds out that on Walter Lambert's tombstone, there's no death year. So either somebody fucked it up, or he's still walking around town. And he was born in like the 1600s, so he'd be looking rough. And I feel like somebody would have noticed by now. But after that, he is once again attacked, and everybody's super mean to him, and the priest is like, fuck you, get your dirt off my shoes. And then Ray Liotta is like, this is my dad's funeral, so why are you ruining it for me? And Hubie tries to freaking connect with this guy and be like, oh hey, you know what, just so you know, my dad died a couple years ago, I totally understand what you're going through. And Ray Liotta, dead ass, throws Hubie in the open freaking grave. So he's sitting there, on top of this guy's freaking casket inside of the grave. And he just takes an L. Like, he just takes the L and is opening up his thermos. He's trying to eat his freaking soup. And the gravedigger shows up trying to close the plot, like any other gravedigger should. And Hubie's like, oh, hey guy, I'm down here. And the gravedigger's like, oh my God, the dead have spoken. And he has a heart attack and I assume dies and falls down into the grave with Hubie. So things haven't been going super well just yet. So then after that, Hubie's got an appointment to do his little safety speech at the elementary school, where we see the other foster daughter, and she's just like this sweet little girl. Her name's Cookie. I don't know why. I don't think it was her best choice. Anyway, her name's Cookie. And China Ann McClain plays a teacher. I did not realize that, because I guess I just kind of see her as a Disney kid. But she plays a teacher, which was very shocking for me in my old age. So Hubie shows up and he walks into the cafeteria pretending to be a ghost, but he is wearing the sheets with the potty stains on them. So everybody's mean to him, of course. And he's giving his little speech about how to have fun on Halloween and how to be a good person. And he's like giving tips on how to give back to like other people who need it. And he gets scared because the one kid is wearing scary makeup for his Halloween costume. So Hubie starts screaming in the middle of his presentation. And then everybody throws food at him. But luckily for him, he has an umbrella in his thermos. So he pulls that out and tries to protect himself. And then after they're done throwing food, he like peeks his eyes up. He's like, oh, like, are you guys out of food? Is it safe for me now? And they throw a goddamn dodgeball at his head. Like, this kid cannot catch a break, and it makes me sad for him. So around town, we're checking in with other cast members, and Julie's other two kids, the boy Tommy and Danielle, the older daughter, go to this coffee shop because Tommy's in love with the girl who works there. Her name's Megan, and she's super cute. And he orders a black coffee to try and make himself sound tough, but then it obviously doesn't go like that well, but Megan's like still interested in him for whatever reason. So she invites him. Well, she like mentions that there's going to be a party going on. He's like, oh, well, like I have to take my sisters out trick-or-treating, but like I'll try to come back, or like I'll try to go to the party afterwards when my mom comes home. And I'm like, you see, like, you can't even pretend to be that tough. Like, you're taking your sisters out trick-or-treating, which is super sweet. And that's cute. And, like, obviously Megan thinks that that's really adorable, but it just kills his whole facade. So he's excited. He wants to go to this party. He leaves the coffee shop, and stupid deli Mike rolls in and knocks his tough-ass black coffee out of Tommy's hand and is a nuisance once again. So after that, kids are starting to trick-or-treat. It's like getting dark out. And Richard, our guy from the hospital, finds a pig mask on the ground and wears that as his costume to have fun and continue to pee all over Salem. So since it's getting dark out and kids are starting to run amok, Hubie's like, hey, it's my time to go. And Mom's like, well, why don't you just like not go out and just stay here, because everybody sucks. People are the worst. Like, you're my special guy. Like, let me just show you how much I love you. And he's like, Mom, this is my time to shine. And like, this is my one day per year that I look forward to. And also it's a full moon. So people are going to be extra crazy. And I have extra work to do to keep people safe. So like right off the bat, Hubie's riding his bicycle around town, and this car is flooring it through a residential and almost kills a cat, and Hubie swoops in at the last second and saves this cat's life. And then the cat mom, Melissa Villasenor, is like, screw you, Hubie, give me my cat back. Bitch, without Hubie, your cat would have been splat on the freaking concrete. Can you be nicer? So then Julie rolls up in her car on her way to her shift at the diner while Melissa Villasenor is giving Hubie a whole load of shit and is like, hey, he saved your cat. Why don't you be nice and try to thank him? And then Cat Lady is like, shut up, you foster kids. Haha, burned you. What? You're making fun of people for saving animals and being a foster parent? Anyway, So then he's also like patrolling around town and stops kids from stealing too much candy when the sign says only take one. And then we find Tim Meadows, who in every Adam Sandler movie that I've experienced, which is this one and Grown Ups too, he has the most unfortunate head of hair situation. So he walks up with a fake ass toupee, and I guess maybe it's a part of his costume, or he's trying to make himself feel better. And he tells Hubie, like, hey, I heard, some shit going bump in the nighttime in your neighbor's house, Walter. Maybe you should go check that out. So Hubie's like, yeah, you know what? Sure. Thank you for the heads up, guy. Like, that's super sweet of you. So he goes over to Walter's house. And meanwhile, Tim Meadows just steals a bunch of candy because he's an asshole. And when he gets to Walter's house, and also they live on Elm Street, which I just thought was humorous because of Nightmare on Elm Street. You get it? Anyway, he gets to Walter's house, and just like Tim said, there's ruckus happening and things are getting kind of disorderly. Hubie breaks in the name of safety and sees that there's like claw marks all over the walls, and there's empty cans of dog food all over the place. My dog right now is going to town on one of these little like puppy mats. So I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background, but like he can't be tamed. So anyway, back to the movie. There's claw marks on the walls, there's empty dog food cans all over the place, and somebody has gone to the potty on a bunch of like sprawled out newspapers. So naturally, we think that he has a dog, but we've never seen a dog. And then Hubie rolls his industrial-sized flashlight around, also courtesy of his thermos, and we see Walter just huddled in a corner, grunting, with his clothes ripped and such. And then he runs away, and then essentially is like beamed up and like launches himself out of like the roof or like a storm door sitch. I don't know. It looks like he goes straight up, but they're in like a basement. I thought it doesn't really matter in all honesty. So he's gone is the moral of that part of the story. So Hubie does his civic duty and brings this information to the police, and Cop Steve is like, the fuck do I care for? I don't. You have to go. But Hubie realizes something's like acting rotten in the state of Salem and is trying to get help. So Steve's like, hey, actually, I'll just put you in this fake team called the Auxiliary Undercover Unit, and that way you can do all of your investigation stuff, but then actually never speak to a police officer ever again. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't come in here, you can't be in contact with any of us, or everything goes to shit. And he was like, all right, yeah, Kurt, like, sounds good to me. So then we flash back over to Julie and her children. I'm positive that you heard my dog just shake his ears. Oh, Sam. So the kids went out trick-or-treating, and Tommy is hitting up the party because his mom is at work. So he's like, oh, kid, like, sisters, stay at home, and I'm gonna go to this party and try to find love. So he goes, he's dressed up as the Tin Man, and Megan, his girl, is dressed up as Little Red Riding Hood, and they're trying to have fun. Hubie shows up. Frickin' Deli Mike is dressed as Freddie Mercury, which he like pulls off really well. It's a great costume choice for him, but he's not a great person in this movie, so I don't like him. So Mike Mercury is wreaking a havoc, and Hubie shows up and is trying to preserve the youth of Salem and stop them from their underage drinking, and he gives them this whole speech, which doesn't go as well as it should have because his mom told him by accident that the word boner means mistake. So he uses the word boner like 10 times in his speech, but he thinks it means mistake, so it's so bad. Then after that's over, he leaves, and Mike Mercury says to his friend, like, hey, when he's about to leave, like, go up to him and tell him that there's a little kid who got lost in the corn maze, because I'm going to be in the corn maze and I'm going to scare him because he's so easily scared and I love to scare him and be an asshole. So Mike goes and hides himself in the corn maze, and this other stupid kid that I don't know his name, and he's so insignificant I'm not gonna look it up, he says, oh Hubie, oh my god, like there's a kid lost in the corn maze. So he's like, well, I actually have to go save a child's life, let me get on that. So he starts to go, he goes into the corn maze because he wants to save a child. And then Tommy and Megan are like, hey, you know, we should probably go in there and let him know that it's fake. So then they do, because they're good, wholesome children. So they track themselves into the corn maze to be like, hey, Hubie, just so you know, it's, unfortunately, it's a lie, and Mike is just hiding, trying to be mean to you. But then they end up split up somehow, and then Mike finds Megan, and it's not great. He's super mean to Tommy. He's fucking mean to everyone. Who's surprised? So we see the camera kind of like switches to first person like point of view, and the camera is like looking out two triangle holes like in a mask. So basically it's made to presume that the person's wearing like a jack-o'-lantern mask, because it's the triangle holes, like the freaking pumpkin eyes. Anyway, so we see that there's somebody in a mask, and they're rolling up on Mike, and he starts screaming. And then Tommy and Megan find Hubie and say, hey, like, just so you know, it was a joke, and Mike was being an asshole to you. So he's like, oh, you know what, sounds about right. Thanks for letting me know, though. You guys are cool. So as Hubie is trying to get himself out of the corn maze, he stumbles upon Mike, who is sitting crisscross applesauce with a corn cob stuck in his mouth, and he's just grunting. And as he's trying to get Hubie's attention, he is yeeted backwards full force through the walls of this corn maze. And Hubie's like, what the fuck? I'm so confused. But then when he goes to inspect the scene, because he's a detective, he finds a movie stub for a drive-in movie. So he's like, a clue. Maybe whoever took Mike is or was at the drive-in movie. So he goes to Cop Steve to report his investigation, and like, he's not a real cop, so he's like, hey, there's actually a kid missing, like maybe you should know about this. And Steve's like, I don't give a shit. I told you before and I'll tell you again, I don't want you to talk to me. So Steve couldn't care less, and he's like, oh, you know what, yeah, go check the drive-in, that'll be fun for you. So then he does, and we're greeted with Tim Meadows and Maya Rudolph, who are husband and wife in this, except she pretty much hates him and very indiscreetly states that she's not attracted to him in any way, shape, or form. So they have some unfortunate conversations in their car during this movie that looks like it's about teenage Frankenstein, who is like going through his monster angst. And they see Hubie in the background doing his surveillance because he's trying to find a freaking kid killer. And they decide to mess with him because they thought it'd be fun, because they hate him too. So they go and play a joke on him, and Maya Rudolph tells him, like, oh my god, there's this old-timey car, and the guy, oh my god, the driver, he's so scary, you have to see it for yourself. And so then Tim Meadows is driving it, and his costume is one of the ones where there's like the silicone neck, and so it looks like his head fell off. So he's driving this car around the drive-in, high beams blasting, which is very disrespectful for the rest of the patrons trying to watch this movie. But he starts driving after Hubie as if they're trying to kill him, and Hubie sees that he doesn't have a head because of his stupid costume, and then the whole freaking O'Doyle clan is in the background throwing stuff at him, and they could not be having more fun if they tried. So Hubie's doing his best to escape the fright, and he takes his Sam. I shouldn't have said your name, I'm sorry. Now he's just staring at me. Back to the movie. So he grabs his thermos and he shoots his grappling hook out over this fence, like onto a tree branch, and he escapes. It just narrowly escapes such imminent threats. So he lands in the middle of the woods. You have to be able to hear him playing with this mat. I'm sorry, I'll try to get rid of it in editing, but like really, I'm not an expert. So he's in the woods trying to figure his life out, and Walter is there. Steve Buscemi, in case you forgot. So Walter is there, like half dressed with like super hairy arms and such, and he's like still not talking. Whatever. So then, since it's Halloween in Salem, there's like a whole bunch of touristy shit to do. So there's like stuff happening downtown and such. So Cop Steve goes up to the mayor and is like, hey, so Hubie told me this kid like went missing, and I didn't care at first because whatever. But the kid's parents have since reported that the kid hasn't come home. So maybe Hubie was telling the truth, and maybe we should be concerned. So maybe we should also just like cancel the tourist festivities. And mayor's like, screw you, because this is where like all of our money for the town comes from. So no, I'm not canceling jack squat. So simultaneously, see, okay, things happen. So many things are happening all at the same time. I apologize if this is confusing, because like I'm not trying to make things harder, but you could also just go watch this anyway. So since Tommy is out, he's not at home watching his sisters, and his sisters are concerned because he's not there, and they don't want their mom to come home and see that he's not taking care of them. So they're trying to go out to find him. And as they're walking around the freaking pitch black streets of Salem, Massachusetts, they stumble upon Richard, who's just pissing all over the damn place still. And they try to ask for help, and internally you're screaming like, oh my god, what if he kills them? Because he's in the psych ward for some unknown reason, but he is apparently super frightening and was supposed to be locked away forever. So, but they don't tell you what happens after that. They ask him for directions, and then he just turns around and stares at them. And then that's it. So we're left to assume that something bad could have happened. So after that all happens, Hubie needs a break. I need a break. He goes to the diner to see his girlfriend Julie because she's working, and he needed more soup. I think he ran out of soup after the funeral because he tried to eat it, but then the gravedigger threw dirt on him. So I'm pretty sure it got tainted. So he gets more soup. He's throwing it all in his thermos. He's throwing in some A1 steak sauce, and he's blending that shit up like a freaking protein shake. And he's trying to get advice from her, and she's like, listen, I'm in love with you. I'm obsessed with you. But she does not admit that right now. She's like, you're the best person I've ever met. You're super nice, and you're great, and you're always nice to other people, and I love you. And he's like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Talk to you later. Then Tim Meadows and Maya Rudolph are finished their drive-in movie experience and are driving themselves home, even though she still hates him. They are driving down the road. There's fog all over the place because it's meant to be scary, and they stop the car because they see a body shape in the middle of the road. So Maya's like, go fix it. So he's like, all right, whatever, I guess I'll do it because I'm the boy. And she's like, yeah, you will. So he goes out to try to fix it, and he's huffing his inhaler, and when he walks out there, he sees that it's just a scarecrow, but the face is actually like super freaking creepy and gross. It looks like a potato sack, but like wilted, as if it's meant to look like aged skin. I don't know how they did it, but it does induce some sort of effect. So she is sitting in the car, Maya's sitting in the car, she could not care less, she needs him to hurry it up, playing on her phone, and she hears him scream. So she gets out of the car and goes to inspect, and when she gets up to the scarecrow face, his inhaler is stuffed in the mouth, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, who would do that? Is that supposed to be funny? And then she gets yeeted backwards. So they're both stolen at this point, but nobody really knows because everything's like empty. And so at this point, people still think that the only missing person is Mike. So we head back to Walter's house. He's struggling. He still only has minimal clothes on. He is getting hairier by the moment. He's screaming at the sun. He's screaming at the full moon. He is coming off very stressed, and he rips out a pair of handcuffs and handcuffs himself to the refrigerator, which is not your best move because act like you couldn't just... Okay, everything is made to make you think that he's turning into a werewolf, okay? Pretend that he transforms into a werewolf. Is he not going to be able to rip the fridge door off or move a fridge? Anyway, he handcuffs himself to the fridge, and it goes up to the side, and Richard is there. in his little scrubs and his sepia-toned Crocs, and he takes off his pig mask, and surprise, it's Rob Schneider wearing a David Spade haircut. And all he says is, "We need to talk." And then that's it. And they cut away from him. So there are still holes in that plot line that need to be filled. So Hubie finds the 2 foster daughters and bring her back home. He shows up. He tells Tommy, like, "Hey, I brought these girls home for you. You're welcome. And call your mom and tell her you love her because she's worried about you and hasn't heard from you. And then also, Megan, tell your parents you're just going to be staying at a friend's house. Wink, wink," so that Tommy can get some. And then he also, by proxy, mentions that he and Richard Hartman used to be friends when they were kids. Apparently, all of like the older age people, like the Rob Schneider, Maya Rudolph, Tim Meadows, Kevin James, all of them were in like the same grade in school. So they were all like aware of each other. He and Rich, the escapee, used to be BFFs, which is not a great color on him because people already hate him. And now you're friends with this guy that everybody else also hates and committed to a psych ward. Anyway, that doesn't actually really mean anything to the plot, but I wasted your time with it anyway. So he leaves, and now there's a haunted house. And he hears all this howling, and he sees a full-on like husky that he thinks is Walter in his final transformation to werewolf. But the quote-unquote wolf runs away, so he steals a fake bullet from this guy's costume because he thinks that the way to kill a werewolf is to shoot it between the eyes with a silver bullet. So he just takes the bullet and thinks he's going to be able to like hit it between the eyes with his hand. I don't know. He goes into the haunted house, but he's scared of everything, so he is physically combusting at every turn. He is screaming, he is crying, he's shaking literally. And then he finally stumbles across the dog, and he tries to throw the bullet at him, and the dog just eats it and then runs away. So he thinks like Walter is on the freaking loose still to this day. But Ray Liotta has already gone through the haunted house. He's outside trying to make a move on China Anne McClain, which is troubling for me because like I said before, I see her as like a Disney child. So why in the world is Ray Liotta, decades surpassed her, trying to slide in her DMs? But she also shares the same concerns as me and is like, "You're 3 times my age, no thanks." And he's like, "Well, I hear Hubie and they're screaming, so since I struck out with you, I'm going to take out all my anger on him." So he goes inside the house and he's trying to track Hubie and like be mean again. He doesn't do anything else with his life, so we're not surprised. And inside the house, the triangle mask person is back, and they are huffing and puffing trying to get through this haunted house. Ray Liotta is like, "Oh hey, Hubie's coming, so lay low and I'm gonna scare the shit out of him." And while they're sitting there waiting, Hubie does show up. Ray Liotta tries to scare him, and then he gets stolen by the triangle mask bandit. So he's like gone. Everybody else, not everybody else, the main people that are actually like the cast are in the house doing like a town meeting, trying to get intel together. And Hubie's like, I already solved the problem for you. It's Walter. And China's like, "No, that's my dog. Let's go back to the drawing board on that one." So while they're going through this whole meeting of trying to figure out who's killing who and why they stole the bodies, they're putting together that there's a common factor between all of these incidents, and that factor is Hubie. So they think that he's doing this. And I guess, from an investigatory standpoint, is not their worst lead. Because realistically, if he's the one out there like preaching safety, of course, like maybe he is trying to get back at people for not trusting him or not believing in him and not listening to him. That he's like, "Well, you know what? I tried to keep you safe, so now I'll just like fake attack people, and then you'll be like, oh my god, you should have saved us." But That's not true. We as the viewers know that he is an all-around good person, and these people are about to roast him for no damn reason. But then also Cop Steve calls back to the police station, and Kenan Thompson is like, oh no, like I have Walter here, and I also have Richie Hartman, because they came in together. Apparently, they're both roommates at the psych ward. But Walter, which isn't his real name is Rick Hudson. But I'm just going to keep calling him Walter because I feel like this is going to end up being confusing enough. So Walter thinks that the psych ward is like a werewolf treatment center because he legitimately thinks that he's a werewolf. And Richie only escaped to bring him back. So once he got Walter, he's like, hey guy, like let's go back to the hospital. And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? So they just turn themselves in and they're sitting nice and pretty in the police station. So this is when everybody genuinely starts to turn on Hubie. And also, one of the things that they do is somebody will just yell Frankenstein and point, and then when everybody looks, that person just runs away. So he yells Frankenstein and points to the other side of the room, and when everybody looks, he runs away. So he escapes and is jogging through the forest to make his getaway. And meanwhile, so throughout the entire movie, anytime that he's on the move, people are just throwing shit at him. People throw literal trash cans, a crutch, and it gets like increasingly more violent as the movie progresses. He is jogging through the forest to try to save his life and his reputation. And there are a couple of freaking brown grizzly bears. I don't know the difference between bears, so don't come for me. I don't care enough. There are these two large-ass full-grown bears throwing shit at him because they hate him. Not actual shit. They're throwing things at him. I don't know. They hate him. And at the top of the hill... What the fuck? At the top of the hill is the radio station. So throughout the movie, they would play like little snippets of this radio DJ Aurora. Just to kind of have like a little narrator type deal. And when he gets to the radio station, Hubie is a longtime listener, a frequent time caller to request songs, and when he walks in to try to get some advice, try to find some safety, DJ Aurora turns out to be freaking Shaquille O'Neal. I don't even know how to continue after saying that phrase, because DJ Aurora has like a stereotypical female voice, and it's like a very like smooth talking jazzy type like talk radio voice, but it's freaking Shaquille O'Neal. And he and Hubie are just staring back and forth between each other because neither one of them I guess Shaq is like, oh, I guess, you know, my radio voice has people fooled. Like, does he not realize how different he sounds? Anyway, we get past that somehow, and they're talking. Shaq's wife comes in, who looks like she could be Jack Black's twin sister. I don't know who she is. I don't really care. So she comes in with this like super deep, basically freaking Allstate guy voice. It's just so random, but it's so funny because they went that extra step to put in just some weird shit. Anyway, so they're talking about how there is a female caller who calls in more frequently than Hubie does. And Hubie's like, I don't know, because I'm kind of obsessed with you guys. And they're like, no, dead ass. This girl calls in all the time. And she always wants to dedicate songs to her, quote, special someone. And then one time, I guess she was like super drunk. And so instead of saying her special someone, she by accident said Hubie out loud. So she like kind of outed herself. And they have the number that this female uses to call into the station. So then they call Cop Steve and have him do some detective work. And they find out that it's a burner cell phone. And he's like, well, who is a female that like has shown interest in you? And poor baby Hubie is like, how would I know if somebody was showing interest in me? And Steve's an asshole once again. Is like, does anybody actually pretend that they like to talk to you? And he's like, fuck you, but yeah, your ex-wife actually, so joke's on you. They set up a little fake stakeout. It looks like a lighthouse island. I don't know. It's super creepy. It's just gray. Like the whole background is shades of black and gray, and there's fog everywhere. So they make Julie come, and Hubie's wearing a wire because they want to get her to confess to it. But the only confessions they make is that they're both in love with each other and have been in love with each other since elementary school. So that's super awkward because Steve's listening in on the other side. So then they call the cell number because they think like, oh, well, if she has it with her and we call it, then we'll catch her straight up in the act. They call the number. It does not ring from Julie's presence and nobody answers. But while they're calling, they can trace it, and the cell is inside Hubie's house. So he starts freaking out because he has to go save his mom, and they're like not taking it seriously. Cop Steve doesn't really even seem to give a shit. He's like, oh, I'll send the priest over there and like make her do some Hail Marys. I don't fucking know. So Hubie finally gets to the house, and the priest is just hanging upside down from a tree trying to play a game. How did he even get himself up there? I'm so confused. And he goes into the house and he sees his mom there, and she's just like sitting in the living room, and he's like, something bad's about to happen because the phone is in the house. And then as she's sitting on her little old lady recliner, on the end table right next to her is the pumpkin mask and a burner cell phone, because Hubie is her special someone, and all she wanted to do was show him how much she loves him. So she went out and she attacked all the people who were mean to him. So they hear a rustling outside, and Hubie goes outside to see what's happening, and he like pulls the curtain back, and it is Ray Liotta, Maya Rudolph, and Tim Meadows, and Mike tied to like a witch stake. Well, there's 3 different witch stakes. So they're just like tied to these little trees with kindling and such surrounding their feet because mom is legitimately about to set all of them on fire. So he goes outside to try to save them, and mom picks up her phone and calls the news to get reporters there. And they don't actually show the conversation, but you see her pick up the phone, and then when the reporters get there, they say the old lady said that they'd be in the backyard. So they run out to the backyard, everybody's back there, and they're trying to figure out what's happening, what did happen. The mom's super upset because everybody's being mean to Hubie, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I'm on her side on that one. And she starts dousing them in gasoline and is seconds away from setting them all on fire. They hear the sirens coming, so she's like, I really have to act quick. So she strikes a match and starts to throw it at them. And Hubie acts fast because he's like, I can't put myself above other people. You know, these people don't deserve to die. Obviously, I don't like how they treat me, but I can't just let them get murdered. So he takes his thermos and he takes whatever little drips of soup he has left and he tosses it, and it kills the match and there's no fire. And then after that, everybody's still being mean to him, like, oh, screw you, you're dumb, blah, and like calling him names and shit. And the mom's like, are you actually kidding me? Because he just saved your lives and you're still being mean to him. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So then they go through the whole thing. Mike says how he just feels all this pressure to be so cool all the time, so that's why I'm mean to people. Like, fuck you. Nobody cares enough if you're that cool. Nobody cares if you're the coolest person in school. You don't need to be mean. Tim Meadows is jealous of Hubie's full head of hair. Maya Rudolph is sexually unfulfilled, and she thinks it's so inspiring how, even though Hubie has never had sex, he still has so much hope. What the fuck does that mean? But okay. And Ray Liotta was indirectly diagnosed dumb when he was a child. So he's jealous of the fact that Hubie can use big words because it makes Ray Liotta feel stupid. So that's just why they bully him and why they're so mean to him. the cops are there. There's only two cops. The two cops are there, Steve and Kenan Thompson, and they're trying to figure everything out. And then Walter and Rich are there too. And Steve's like, why did we bring them? And Kenan's like, we don't have any other cops, so we couldn't just like leave them at this station all by themselves. And one of the funniest parts of this entire movie, hands down, is the fact that during this whole debacle, Steve Buscemi is back there. Steve Buscemi is standing there behind them, just pretending to be a werewolf still. It's so funny, because then the mom's like, oh my god, my great grandmother was a witch and blah blah blah, and Walter goes, I was there. And it's just the small like offhanded shit, I can't deal with it. It's the funniest thing. So then after that, we still don't even know who killed Peanut the pig. And I did not forget about Peanut, because like an animal of all things. So we do find out that unfortunately Walter killed Peanut because he thought he was a werewolf, so he had to satiate his hungers. And then that's that. We fast forward till next year, kind of. Well, so like Hubie does his little speech and he and Julie are in love with each other. Then we fast forward to next year. They're together and they still have all three kids. So the reason I believe that Tommy is actually a foster kid also is because in front of Steve, he calls Hubie dad. So I don't think that Cop Steve is his dad from before the divorce. So it's cute though. They have the three kids. They have Tommy and the daughters, and they all call him dad because he and Julie are together. They've been in love with each other forever. And Tommy and Megan are still together. And it's Halloween again, and they all have their Hubie themed Halloween costumes. So there's the priest, and then one daughter's dressed up as Cop Steve, and then Richard Hartman, and then Walter, the fake werewolf. And now Hubie is the mayor of Salem because everybody got over themselves and stopped being such a dick for absolutely no reason. So he's the mayor, he's riding around town, and he cannot wait for everybody to have so much fun this Halloween. And then stupid O'Doyle is there, and he right quick almost was mean, but he saved himself, and he was like, oh no, you know what, man, like, you're cool. But then Hubie's like, I don't forget. So he's like, oh, my mom's right behind you. Haha. To pretend that she was going to steal them and try to kill them. But then credits start rolling, and my absolute favorite thing in the entire world is bloopers. So as the credits are rolling and they're going through each cast member, they're showing bloopers from the filming. And it makes me so happy. I could watch bloopers and people cracking all day, every day. Like, my favorite part of any SNL episode is when the actors break. I actively spend time on YouTube watching blooper reels from my favorite sitcoms and such. It's my favorite genre. My favorite genre of anything in the entire world is bloopers. So they have some freaking gems in that section. And then after the bloopers, a screen pops up dedicating the movie to Cameron Boyce, which kills me because sometimes like I'll forget about it, and then when I'm reminded, it's so upsetting because that was like, I mean, I was a little bit older, but that was like my era of Disney. And all the grown-ups movies, there's only 2 of them, but oh my god, it's so upsetting. And then you see like his siblings from Jesse, like Peyton and Karan, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name once again, are all in it too. It's so upsetting that that happened in life. But it was really sweet, and I think caring that they dedicated it to him. Anyway, that shit got to me. So that's the end of the whole movie. That was it. It was so much better than I expected it to be. And I promise you, rewatch this for a fact. I know that my like spooky episodes have kind of been all over the place, but it's like difficult for me to make choices. In general, it's difficult for me to make choices in anything in life. But some of like the old school Halloween movies are actually like super long. And if these are going to be an hour, like if my episodes are going to be an hour long for a movie that's an hour and a half, imagine how long that's just going to be for a movie that's 2.5 hours long. I feel like that's so extra. So like part of me just does not want to take that leap. But I mean, I guess we'll see where things take me. So that's where I'm at for right now. This movie is like still super poppin'. It just came out a couple weeks ago. It's consistently in the top 10 on Netflix. So there you go. Here's your clickbait. Other than that, that's all I have for you for today, and I will see you next time. Probably. Okay, bye.